This is We Have Options, hosted by me, personal finance expert Dominique Broadway. I left my career as a financial advisor to the 1% to help the 99% build generational wealth. No matter who you are, you have options, and I am here to help you turn those options into dollar signs. Now let's cover some new ground. So when you start to evaluate option opportunities, you're going to want to pay attention to the option Greeks, okay? And the option Greeks are not fraternities and sororities, and we love all of our fraternities and sororities, but here we use the Greek letters delta, gamma, theta, vega, and rho, okay? And these Greeks are used to assist traders in measuring the risk of an option. They are also used to provide a clear understanding of the option sensitivity to many variables that make up that risk. Now, let's cover our very first Greek, which is the delta. So the delta represents how much the price of the option goes up or down as the price of the stock goes up or down. So the delta measures how much the price of the option will change as a result of a $1 change in the stock. So essentially, if the stock goes up $1 and the delta is 0.50, that means that your premium price that you pay will go up 0.50 for every share that you own in the option contract, okay? So delta usually appears as a decimal number, okay? Now, with put options, there is a negative relationship with the delta due to a negative relationship with the underlying security. So you'll notice with call options, the delta may just say 0.50 versus with a put, the delta may say negative 0.50. It's just a negative relationship, okay? So the delta also represents an approximation of the probability that a option will be in the money or worth money at the time that it expires, okay? Next, let's talk about the gamma. So the gamma represents the rate of change of a delta relative to the change of the price of the underlying stock or asset, okay? So it measures how much the delta changes is if the value of the stock goes up or down by $1, okay? So investors use the gamma to help forecast changes in the options delta and determine how stable that delta is, because the delta can change. It's not a set number, okay? And the gamma will always be a number anywhere between 0 and 1.00. Okay, so for an example, let's say that the options gamma is 0.10. So that means that if the price of the stock goes up or down by $1, then the delta would probably go up or down by 0.10 as well. Okay, next, let's talk about the theta. So the theta represents the rate of time decay of an option. This is another very important one. Specifically, it describes how much the value of an option changes every day as it gets closer and closer and closer and closer and closer to expiration. Okay, so as an example, if an option has a theta of negative 0.50, that means that every day that this option gets closer and closer to expiration, it's going to be decreasing by 0.50 or 50 cents every single day, okay? So if your delta is lower than your theta, you could be in a pretty bad situation, because that means that every day your option price is going to be decreasing, and if your delta can't keep up with it and earn enough of that, you're going to lose money. And this is a lot of times why people see their options go worthless quickly. Okay, much quicker than what they anticipated. Okay, so this is another reason that the theta is very important. Time decay is not your friend, okay? And theta measures that time decay, and time decay is not your friend, and time decay also happens on the weekends, not just Monday through Friday when the market is open. It's another thing to keep in mind, okay? Next is the vega. So the vega represents an option sensitivity to volatility, all right? It measures the rate of an option's value relative to the security's volatility. So more specifically, it measures how much the price of an option changes based on a 1% change in the volatility of the underlying stock, okay? The Vega is an essential measurement because volatility is one of the more important factors that affects option values, okay? So all else being equal, it makes sense to purchase an option that is less sensitive to volatility or, okay, with a higher Vega, okay? Next is the row, or last but certainly not least is the row. The row represents how sensitive, okay? Options are sensitive too. The row represents how sensitive the price of an option is relative to interest rates. Now, as you guys know, the Fed just keeps raising rates and raising rates and raising rates. Believe it or not, this actually has an effect on options, okay? So this row measures the rate of change in an option's value based on a 1% change in the interest rates, okay? So, for an example, if an option has a row of 0.50, then the value of the option would increase or decrease by 50 cents when the Fed interest rate increases or decreases by 1%. Now, obviously, the row is probably one of the more least significant factors when it comes to options, but during these times that we're in, where interest rates are increasing all the time, it's kind of important to look and see how much your option price could change if the Fed decides to just keep raising the rates every couple weeks, okay? So in addition to the Greek chorus, you're also going to want to pay attention to the expiration date and the strike prices when you are selecting your options. Now, these expiration dates. Now, when it comes to expiration dates, this is where a lot of people get caught up. They're like, Dominique, what expiration date do I pick? Do I pick the one for next Friday or 5 Fridays from now or by next summer? Which expiration date do I pick? And this is my answer always. Think about when you go to the store and buy milk. When you go to the store and buy milk, you do not buy the milk that's expiring tomorrow. You're probably also not going to buy the milk that expires this Friday. You're going to look, or as my mom always told me, open up the fridge in the grocery store, put your arm all the way in the back of the refrigerator and get the milk in the back because that's the milk that's going to have the furthest out expiration date. I do the same thing with bread too. That's how you want to pick your options, okay? So you don't necessarily want to pick the option that's going to expire this Friday, right? Because of theta and time decay, right? Because that we're getting closer and we don't want something that's going to be expiring too soon. So you always want to pick an expiration date that is at least next week out or maybe even further based on your strategy. And we'll talk about that in another episode. But this is essentially why expiration dates are important and how you need to pick them. So always think about the milk strategy when you're looking at picking expiration dates. You don't want the milk expiring tomorrow, okay? That's not what you want, okay? Next, let's talk about the strike prices. Strike prices is another thing where people are like, which one do I pick? Picking a strike price will vary based on a lot of different things. I always personally like to pick strike prices that are closer to in the money, right? Closer to whatever the stock is currently trading at. But if your budget doesn't allow, you could always pick a strike price that is way out of the money, meaning way further away from what the stock is currently trading at. And you'll notice that the further away you get from what the stock is currently trading at when it comes to strike prices, you'll notice that the premium price is going to start to decrease. And you'll also notice that the delta is going to decrease as well, meaning that you're going to make less money when you pick a strike price that's further out versus one that is more in the money or more at the money, okay? So that's another thing that's really important to keep in mind when you're selecting your strike price. We Have Options is a production of Money News Network. We Have Options is written and hosted by me, Dominique Broadway. Our executive producer is Morgan Lavoie.